Hey, I'm Austin Adamson from GenerOZity, but I'm also Austin Adamson from MonsterVine.com. MonsterVine is an independent games website where we take novice and veteran writers and put them in a collaborative environment to hone passion and develop skills. Together, we're a fun group that loves to talk and write about games with our audience. Here is a showcase of interviews from MonsterVine for GenerOZity, and a reminder to donate if you're able at donations.generozity.com.au. Enjoy.
Hello, I am the managing editor of MonsterVine, Spencer Legacy, and I'm here today with Adam Williams of Quantic Dream, and we're going to be talking about his role at the studio as well as the games. How are you today, Adam?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Spencer?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. Always great to get an interview in, and I'm a big fan of Quantic Dream, so this is pretty exciting.
So we're off to a good start then.
Yeah, we're off to a good start, exactly. So we'll start pretty basic. How did you come to join Quantic Dream?
So around, it's late 2015, so God, that's 5 years ago now.
Oh my God.
I'd been working in UK television for some years, and we were aware in TV of the possibility of interactive stories and how interactive stories were becoming more and more popular and better understood by the people who made them. And we were particularly worried about a company called Quantic Dream because their games looked and were starting to look as good as a TV show might look, a CGI TV show might look, and they had all this interactivity built into them. And I ended up playing Beyond, which was Beyond Two Souls, which was the game they had out at that time. And I was so kind of excited as a writer about the idea of an interactive story, how many extra weapons that gives you, that I wrote to David. My agent got David's email address for me through her dark arts, and I wrote to him spontaneously and asked if he'd be interested in hiring a new writer, which he was. So it was as simple as that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a rare kind of story where it's like very simple. It's not, through 5 people and then hopefully you get a shot. That's interesting. So what are some of the challenges that come with writing such large-scale narrative games with so many decisions?
The challenges are cousins of the opportunities, if you like. So as a writer in a linear medium like TV or cinema, you're always aiming to make the audience care about the characters and to feel invested in the action. So, if the hero is in trouble, you should care about them getting out of trouble. And with interactive stories, there's some sense in which you put that character in trouble through the choices you made. So caring about the character situation is kind of built into the form. That, of course, increases complexity. So, and the complexity is kind of exponential. So you might think that a story with 2 paths in it is twice as complicated as a story with 1 path in it. But once you start adding additional layers of choice and managing additional layers of consequence, it's not linear, it's exponential. So in a game like Detroit, we think we calculated over 1,000 combinations of ending, Act 3, not including endings where the game ends sooner than Act 3 because all the characters have died because they can. So, bearing all of that in mind, we graphed it. There are ways of visualizing it. So we had a graph in our office at the time of all the different cases, and it was sort of like a constellation shape because you could experience these scenes in different orders and so on. So managing the complexity just in terms of sheer number of things that can happen is a challenge. An additional challenge is making sure that each path is satisfying in its own way, because you don't want the audience to sense that they went down a path that you didn't spend much time thinking about or you think is kind of a bit of a dead end. Each path needs to have some kind of satisfying resolution to it. So managing the various cases is the single biggest challenge from the writing standpoint, I think.
There's such expansive games as well that it's just got to be a huge amount of effort and time. So that's pretty impressive. So out of all of the Quantic Dream games, which would you say is your favorite?
I don't feel I can say Detroit because I did work on Detroit.
Fair.
I will always have a soft spot for Beyond. Heavy Rain is kind of the popular kid in the Detroit state, in the Quantic Dream stable, I think. Beyond for me was, I could feel as a writer playing it that it was a very personal story. That there was something, there was a kind of an emotional sincerity or truth in that story for David, for the writers, that as a writer, it's always exciting to see that, because that kind of thing doesn't often get made. A lot of what gets made, especially in TV, is designed by committee and, you know, focus grouped and marketed and understood to have a broad commercial appeal. That being said, what I liked about Detroit was that Detroit was kind of an order of magnitude more complex than Beyond or Heavy Rain were. Mm-hmm. So Detroit has far more cases than either of those games. A lot more happens in it. There's a lot more variety of things that can happen. Characters can end up totally on one side or the other side of a conflict, or taking their own third way that's just about them as individuals. And so as an interactive story, I do think Detroit is the best, simply because we push the envelope so far. I mean, no two players get exactly the same story when they play the game, just because of the sheer variety. Is kind of statistically improbable that anybody else would ever get the same exact playthrough you got. So the fact that the game gives you a kind of you have this like narrative fingerprint, which is your playthrough, and that really does belong to you. That quality makes Detroit my favorite in that sense, I think.
No, that makes complete sense. And do you have a favorite character in Detroit? Someone whose storyline you particularly like?
Very tricky question, because you work on the only way you can work on characters like this is if you come to have a sincere empathy with the character and feel that the character does things which are totally understandable given their circumstances. Even the villains, you have to understand them on some level. I'm going to have to slightly cop out and just tell you that each has a quality that I like about them in particular. Yeah. So in Connor's case, Connor has a unique perspective on the events of the game out of the entire cast, because on the one hand, he's an android working for the humans who are trying to put down the androids, and he's an enforcer on behalf of the humans. And yet he is of the androids, and he has all the abilities of an android. In fact, he has enhanced abilities as a advanced prototype. So in that sense, he's in both camps. So he has this unique view where he's helping to persecute the people from whom he comes. And I really like that about his character, because it means his dilemmas are totally unique to him. You know, he's in situations that only he can be in, where he can steer the revolution towards success or failure from inside the human arrangement and so on. With Kara's story, I love that her story is just so personal. So between Connor and Marcus, you have these two faction leaders, if you like, or they're quite high up the social hierarchy vertically. Kara really looks at the situation from underneath as a kind of ordinary person, if you like, ordinary android trapped in these forces that are much larger than her, and she tries to survive. So her story, I think, is the most personal. And then Marcus is, in some sense, Marcus is the protagonist of the game, because it's his decisions that drive the plot forward. So he's a kind of archetypal hero in that sense, which I think is a lot of fun to play, because his choices affect the whole city, and you see that. You know, the consequences are not just local to his story; they change the environment of the city that you're playing in. So his choices perhaps have the most resonance. So you know, each of them in their own way. Yeah,
no favorite child. They're all the best.
For sure. I was trying to avoid the child metaphor. But it is the natural one, yes.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, so Twitch recently announced that there's a new plugin that lets you let audiences kind of vote on which choice you should make in the game. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that in terms of how it impacts the game itself?
It's just a fantastic innovation. So, you know, I can be quite gushing about this tool because I didn't do a lot of the hard work on it. When Detroit came out, we very quickly realized how streamable, if you like, the game is. It's the kind of game that you can watch somebody else play and enjoy watching them play it, and it's still worth you playing it on your own, because you're not going to get the same story anyway. And it's a real good conversation starter to see somebody else playing the game and say, oh my God, why did they choose to do this? Why did they choose to do that? And watching streamers, you could see that. And, you know, Brian Deckert and Amelia, the guy who plays, you know, they pioneered a lot of this in the streaming that they did. So I'd want to plug them, Deckert Games. They really show how this is done. They want to get the audience involved in the choices that they're making. You know, they want to know, is there a consensus one of the fun things about the game is trying to find out what your friends did and whether you can find a consensus on the moral dilemmas in the game. So to have a tool that facilitates that connection between a streamer and their audience in such a way that the barrier of communication is totally opened, and as you play, the audience can have input on what they think you should do, and that can all be polled, and you get these constant snapshots as to what percentage of people think you should help somebody versus not help somebody, for example. It's very natural for streamers, but it's also very natural for the game. I think a game that is so built on dilemmas and choices. So we're very excited about it, and our understanding is that it's being used to great effect.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview here with us. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
And do you have anything that you want to plug or anything?
The game is now out on more platforms than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a Steam release. As you've mentioned very kindly, there's the plugin as well. A lot of people have been intrigued by Quantic games in the past, but have been unable to get a hold of them because they've been tied to specific formats.
Yeah.
Now anybody can try these games. They're available on PC at any rate. And we'd encourage anybody who's always been intrigued by the games but hasn't had the chance to play them to come and join the party and find out what all the fuss is about.
Hi folks, it's Daniel Thompson from MonsterVine. I have with me today Dave Bennett to talk with me about Shell Games and their game Until You Fall. So Dave, how have you been surviving the most interesting summer break of your life?
All the days are blending together. Work and home are the same place now. The good screen is now the bad screen, but the bad screen is also the good screen. So like, I don't know, man. It's good. It's definitely been weird, but it's been nice that we've been able to continue just working on this to kind of maintain some sense of normalcy.
So work at the studio has been not like super impacted then by the quarantine. You're all
thankfully,
like to work well.
Yeah, I think there's a huge credit goes to the studio management, IT team, all of our teams being able to kind of adapt so quickly. Like even all the way back at, end of March is when this all started. So what, 6 months ago almost?
Yeah.
But yeah, like we were able to pretty quickly just like take all the hardware that we needed to get home, make sure it was secure and locked down, and then just pick things back up. Like the hardest part and like off frame, and I want to move the camera to just like show the mess that is this office now, but like I have four computers in my office now with 3 different headsets and a bunch of other different configurations, just because usually all this stuff is in the office, but we don't have easy access to it anymore, so a lot of things had to be taken home. So besides that part, it's been great.
You have a video game, which is what we're trying to talk about here. Product of the times. Every interview I just want to talk about everything just surrounding this, because it's just so different and unique for everybody. But Until You Fall is a roguelite that you all have published, and it's very has a very distinct art style and very distinct compared to the other VR offerings, like a music choice and everything. So what would basically be for those who are like, because I know we've done an interview before and have given a pretty comprehensive overview of the game, those who are tuning in now because their interest is ignited by the recent announcements of some upcoming ports, what would basically be your basement or your elevator pitch?
Well, let's see. Until You Fall is a VR hack and slash roguelite, kind of as you mentioned, set in this weird kind of almost neon hellscape. You are basically a dead glowing knight fighting other dead glowing knights, and each time you fight in combat, you get stronger during a run. Eventually you will fall, and then that kind of your progress from that run is converted into currency, which you then use to permanently buy and upgrade weapons. And this is all set to, like you said, kind of a interesting neon hellscape is what I like to use the term, because it's just this strange neon forest backed by a basically a synthwave soundtrack, all kind of designed to kind of keep you moving forward, kind of pushing you into combat.
Interesting. So unlike Beat Saber, which is like a music rhythm game, this is more of an action game with music elements.
The term that we kind of retroactively coined was like rhythm light. Rhythm's not the focus of it, but it really helps kind of determine and encourage the flow of combat.
Okay, Cool. So recently, publication VR Fitness Insider, they collected a bunch of different games which were best, because since a lot of people are at home and they're not going to gyms and everything like that, the best games for like fitness, and a lot of them were VR games. And I did see Until You Fall on there. They gave it a fitness rating equatable to using an elliptical or a rowing machine.
Yep.
And they said in their measurements, players were shedding approximately like 7 calories per minute. So during the development, was the game ever considered like to be possibly used as an alternative for exercise, or did that just happen to be a selling point for the game now?
I mean, honestly, I would love to say that we were all super geniuses and totally planned that. But the truth of the matter is, like, we wanted to just make something that made you feel powerful and awesome. And the way that worked out is with big heroic gestures. And so, swinging your swords in the game in order to do the best damage, you need to make the widest swings possible. Because again, we wanted to for gameplay purposes discourage against like wee waggling, that kind of thing. Because it doesn't feel cool, but as we continue kind of layering on mechanics and actually building up the fights with the multiple opponents, like there is a lot of movement you have to do, especially as we layer in mechanics like dodging, where you physically have to lean in and out of the way of your opponents, in addition to like the regular arm swinging for your weapons. So, no, it kind of, as we continue adding mechanics to the game, it was kind of revealed to us like, oh, actually, I'm getting tired playing this. And I guess that's because I'm actually being physically active.
But recently, the announcement from you all is that Until You Fall is going to be releasing on the Oculus Quest and PlayStation platform. So how has the response been following that announcement?
I think people are stoked. A lot of people have PlayStation VR. A lot of people are excited about the Quest. I think the number of people that one of the number one requests that we've gotten since we put the game out on early access, like, oh, when's this coming to Quest? When's this coming to PlayStation? And so the fact that we've been able to actually deliver on that is super exciting. And there's just a lot of hype. Like even in our Discord, we had a bunch of people early on that joined. Is like, oh man, this looks awesome, but I only have a Quest, so I guess I'll come back when it's gonna be on the Quest. And believe it or not, they came back and they're just totally hyped. And so that's a great feeling.
Is Until You Fall still going to be room scale on Oculus Quest, or is it still going to be like more of a stationary experience, or someone can get by just staying still?
We definitely made it so that people can get by staying still, because I mean, as working from home has taught us, not everyone has a lot of space to necessarily play their VR games. But it's the kind of thing where the lack of cable in the back of the head is definitely an advantage, because you can turn around in 360 degrees. Like, I prefer using the stick to kind of do quick turns to like target my enemies, but at the same time, like when I'm playing on the Quest, like I'm much more like pivoting and moving around.
Because I know that the architecture is fairly different for the Quest, but has there been any notable like struggles and everything? I know that a lot of games, like even just Beat Saber, which is a lot more simplistic than Until You Fall, they have to tone down like the lighting and particle effects and resolution quite a bit. So how has the process been in terms of porting the game and like trying to choose, okay, what aspects are we going to like tone back on, what aspects are we going to be able to like preserve? Can you give any background on that at all?
Sure. I mean, the goal has definitely been for all these new versions is to preserve the feel of the game. Like, you still need to feel awesome, and so we didn't want to compromise on like, okay, well, these platforms have to have fewer enemies. Like, no, we tried to. This game is basically the same game, whether it's on PC or Quest or PlayStation. So like the content is the same, the mechanics are the same, the feel is the same. In terms of the visuals, I mean, it's hard, especially going to both the Quest and the PlayStation, because both of them have different strengths and weaknesses. So obviously a lot of the stuff is like, okay, well, a lot of the lazy stuff we were doing for the PC version, we have to really clean up. Like, we have to reduce garbage collection. We have to make sure that we're not needlessly making CPU calls for, easy things. And then for the graphic side of things, it's like, okay, well, definitely on the Quest, we need to make sure that we use transparent textures sparingly, because that tends to be where the bottlenecks and the frame drops happen. So we did a lot of work at like we have some serious wizards on both the art team and but our tech, art, and shade like graphics programmer are wizards. And so they were able to really pull some magic out of their hats to make it so that we still had this kind of cool neon look, but a lot of the particle effects are now chunkier rather than using a lot of soft kind of like simple edges. And so we really kind of lean into this different art style because we wanted to make it look distinct and still feel like Until You Fall, but not have it feel like the worst version of Until You Fall, if that makes sense.
That's a lot more clever than just like toning down the particle effects and, like you said, just downrising it. That takes a lot more work.
Yeah, and like it definitely was a lot more work, but I know the team was very passionate about like, okay, well, if we can't make it look exactly like it does on the PC, because like that's the thing that a lot of people fell in love with, like, oh, look at this awesome style, look at these effects, look at these great graphics. If we can't achieve that level of fidelity, let's make sure that it still looks good in its own right and still feels like Until You Fall.
Yeah. One of the things that makes this game really excellent is the amount of replayability that the game has as the levels change basically every time that you boot it up. That way you never get bored. Has there been like adjustments or expansions to the overall aspect of that at all in the Oculus Quest and PS4 versions, or has that been preserved completely
So that's
compared to the PC one?
So the content parity is basically the same with the current version of early access.
Gotcha.
There's obviously been balance adjustments and other tweaks. There's been a slew of bug fixes and other fun things that, based off of the playtest data and basically the analytics we're gathering from the PC version, we've made for all versions of the game. But definitely the goal has been, all right, well, for us, what do we need to do to make sure that in the future it's easy for us to add new content to all platforms, as well as just in general making a good base for like a 1.0 offering to the community. And we've gotten a lot of like positive, like everyone wants more stuff, everyone wants more traits, content, weapons, levels, enemies. Like we also want to add those, but we want to make sure that like, all right, well, let's make sure that all of our ducks are in a row on these new platforms. And then we can then look to the future as people on these new platforms start getting caught up on like, okay, they're going to be playing. Like this is for players that don't have other VR headsets, this will be an entirely new experience for them. And so we're totally stoked to see like how they react to it and what sort of things that they want.
Like, so it's interesting to hear that like graphics aren't a problem and everything in terms of like trying to optimize that compared to the other stuff. Like, I mean, I'm sure you didn't have to get as creative as you had to with the Quest version, but the effort really counts to that community. They're very dedicated, so I'm excited to see what sort of success that you'll all find there, and I'm excited to see what the future of Until You Fall and Shell Games overall is. So thanks so much for joining us, Dave. Really excited for the game's release. And is there like an approximate time window that you've all announced in terms of when we might expect Until You Fall to hit PS4 and Oculus Quest? Or
the fall, fittingly.
The fall. Oh,
yeah.
You could just not even announce a specific date. Just it comes out one day.
Yeah, it's right in the name. The clues were there the whole time.
I can't believe I didn't notice that. I knew that information. I didn't connect the dots.
Until the fall. But yeah. So yeah, right now there's no specific date that we've announced just yet, but that will be coming soonish. TM. But yeah, no, totally excited to see how people react to it on the new platforms, as well as shoring up the PC version as well. Because again, like I think there's a lot of room for this to grow, and so I'm excited to see people basically get into it and let us know what ways they want to see it grow.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
こんにちは。ファイトクラブ開発者の大貫正文です。独立したソフトウェアデベロッパーとしてこの4年ほどは活動しています。たった一人のゲームスタジオです。もともとはセガのゲームプログラマーでした。ファイトクラブはスティックもしくは加速度センサーでカニの両腕を動かし、戦うアクションゲームで相手を繰り返して3カウント取れば勝ちというレスリングのようなルールのゲームです。また古今東西様々な、武器も登場します。それらで殴り合ってファイトする、喧嘩するゲームです。 カニはたくさんの種類があり、その形は千差万別です。私はキャラクターの見た目がカニというゲームではなく、カニの形を生かしたゲームを作りたかったのです。これは実際にゲームに登場するカニのモデルとなった、剥製です。また私は子供の頃空手をやっており、いわゆるコマンド入力ではなく実際にこう腕を動かして戦っているような、感覚のゲームを作りたかった。この2つの考えを融合してできたのが、ファイトクラブです。実際カニはこうハサミが大きく、動作が分かりやすいですし、爪の動きが閉じるか開くかでボタン操作に非常にマッチしています。また体は横に広く広いゲーム画面に全身がフィットするので、非常にショルダービューのアクションゲーム向きの生き物と言えるでしょう。私はもともと複雑なゲームを好む傾向がありますが、最初のプロトタイプは本当にカニが動かせるだけのシンプルなものでした。そこに様々な遊び方ができるように武器を導入し、それに付随して腕のスタミナなどゲームとしての、駆け引きになる要素を追加していきました。例えばビームを出したり高速移動したりするハイパーモードも、先にアクションを作ってからそれがゲーム内の逆転要素になるようシステムを考えました。操作の面白さに軸足を置いたゲームなので、まずは面白いアクションができる仕組みを考え、それがゲーム内で意味を持つようにシステムで補助するという形ですね。ただ見た目が面白くてもゲーム内で意味のないものは排除しているので、それが奥深さにつながっていると思います。一番というのは難しいですが、スクーターと鎖鎌の組み合わせは好きですね。鎖を相手に絡ませたままずーっと走ると、気分は映画マッドマックスのようです。ただどちらもゲームの中では変わり種の武器です。プレイして一番気持ちがいいのはオーソドックスな両手武器をうまくコントロールして戦っている時ですね。すごいチャンバラの気分を味わえます。様々なカニや武器を試して個性的なプレイスタイルを体験してください。リーチの長いカニ、素早いカニ、命令型のカニ、オールラウンドなカニ、多目的なカニなどがいます。23種類のカニ、48種類の武器がありますので、組み合わせはエンドレスです。また11種類のステージがあり、ステージ固有の武器もありますので、ぜひ探してみてください。オンラインマッチでは見知らぬ人とランクマッチで1対1のバトルで腕を競い合ってもいいですし、友達と一緒に4人までワイワイと遊ぶこともできます。またフォトモードを使って思い出に残るシーンを撮影してみてください。スイッチに保存して友達とオンラインでシェアもできます。ゲーム内容やゲームのシステムについてもっと知りたい人は YouTube のマスティフチャンネルにあるゲームプレイオーバービュービデオやキャンペーンモードオーバービュービデオを見てください。ありがとうございました。
I'm Brian, journalist with MonsterVine. I have with me Steve Papoutsis, correct me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, who is the Chief of Development Officer at Striking Distance Studios, the upcoming studio that was announced last year. I believe you guys moved into your headquarters not too long ago officially. So we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about what you guys have planned coming up. But before we kind of get into the Striking Distance business, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Brian. Nice to meet you. My name's Steve. Like you mentioned, I'm the Chief Development Officer at Striking Distance Studios. I've been making games now for about 26 years. Really a big part of my life, as you can imagine, 26 years, long time. I started in the game industry as a tester and kind of worked my way through various positions, was a sound designer, audio director, producer, general manager, executive producer. I've had the great opportunity to work with tons of very talented people over the years, and now I find myself in this new position with this exciting new project and exciting new studio.
You have a very eclectic career and a pretty prodigious one as well. it was in 1995, I think, that I read that you were the creator of a pop punk band, and you guys actually had a hit top 40 song.
Yeah, we in '95 was when I kind of ended my music career and moved into games. But before that, back in the mid to late '80s, I started a band called No Use for a Name, and I was the bass player for that, and got to tour around the world and meet all kinds of interesting people and play music and share fun experiences with people that enjoyed our music. It was quite fun. Yeah.
And then from there you would go on to work in video games, where of course you would also continue to win awards. I believe I saw a BAFTA award under your belt, a couple of E3 awards, and the other one that I thought was really impressive was the Daytime Emmy. So yeah, it's not often you get to talk to somebody who has video game awards, a top song from the 90s, and an Emmy. So yeah, pretty unique. Which of those awards, between like the BAFTA and the E3 awards and the Daytime Emmy, and just having like a hit song, is the one that you brag about the most?
Boy, I I'm just very fortunate to be connected with the group of individuals that won those awards. None of those awards are individual awards; they are team-based awards. So I'm very thankful and appreciate my chance to be part of those awards. So the one that I probably take the most pride in terms of the team's achievement, it would probably be the BAFTA award that Dead Space won. That was amazing for a lot of different reasons. It was a brand new game for the studio. It was the first in a franchise. It's a very cool looking award, and it just reminds me of a great experience overall.
It's very cool. Like, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that sort of like rap sheet for anybody. So yeah, awesome, just very awesome. So like we mentioned, you do have quite a history in gaming. Since 1995, you've worked on several notable franchises like Dead Space, Medal of Honor, I believe I saw, Battlefield, Lord of the Rings, just all sorts of stuff under your belt. But now you are the Chief of Development Officer at Striking Distance. Can you explain kind of what that entails?
Sure, I'll take a shot at that. It's kind of an interesting title, Chief Development Officer. When Glenn and I started talking about Striking Distance, he asked me to kind of oversee the development of the game, right? And I guess at this point in my career, he wanted me to be, on the executive team at the studio. So that's where that kind of title came from. I guess if I would characterize what my role really is I'm in a great position where I get to work with tons of creative people. And one of my roles and responsibilities is to assemble that team. And so work with with the leads and the directors to find the great talent that we're going to build the team with. And then, of course, just kind of use my experience to help guide the development of the game in whatever capacity I can.
Now, you're not the only veteran over at Striking Distance. It is a really impressive crew you have over there. Glenn Schofield, Stacey Hirata were the two names that I've seen, that I know I've seen more than once, going through the news. How do you guys kind of assemble a team like that? Like, what kind of communications were going on, and just how were you able to convince kind of all of these other veterans to take a risk and kind of explore Striking Distance with you guys?
That's a great question. So I think the biggest thing for us is, obviously I think every studio will say you want to find the best people possible. And that is certainly true for us. We want to assemble a team of experts in their various disciplines. But really at the heart of it for us, it's to find people that are fun to work with, that share the same passion, that are interested in kind of that intersection of art, design, and technology, and find value in all of those components. Of course, we want people that share and appreciate narrative games. That's something that's very important to us. So looking for, people that are going to be fun to work with, that are extremely talented, and that will kind of help us build a fun environment and culture for people to want to work at.
Okay, cool. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, and it's not like something I really like to like put into stories stuff right now, but like COVID is obviously a big issue right now, and I think especially with like up and coming development studios, small businesses and stuff like that, COVID has really changed how a lot of our timelines work. I know you guys had kind of announced Striking Distance was an entity June last year, before COVID was really even a thing, and then in February you guys officially moved to your headquarters in San Ramon, but then a month later, we're kind of forced to live in our homes and work away from work. So how have you guys adjusted to that?
Yeah, that's another good question. So obviously, people can't really plan for something like that to happen, and it's super unfortunate and terrible that we're kind of going through that as a world. One of the things that before any of that happened, you mentioned us moving into our new place. We were really thinking ahead about just the way people work nowadays. A lot of people enjoy the flexibility of being able to work from home on occasion. So that was something that we had thankfully planned for, the ability to allow people to do that as needed. So once, we kind of moved into the shelter in place phase, we were able to transition people to working from home pretty smoothly. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to our operations group that helped facilitate that transition.
We can't talk like specifics about the game Striking Distance is working on, but it's common knowledge now that it is a narrative experience within the PUBG universe. Can you explain at all what it's like to work as like a PUBG subsidiary?
Yeah, I think I can. So, when we first met the folks from PUBG, before we, officially kicked off the studio, one of the things that was so incredibly refreshing and cool about the folks from PUBG is that they're just, they're game developers. They're very supportive of the creative process. They wanted to make sure that the game that we wanted to make was something that we were passionate about making. And so there were really no, hard and fast rules laid down. It was just, make the game that, you feel that is the right game to make. And they've been super helpful along the way in terms of supporting everything we wanted to do. And also, having input when we share ideas and work with them, when we meet with them, they're very good to collaborate with and talk to. And it's really cool. They have this, mega franchise that was kind of started this whole battle royale genre. And but, at their heart, they're just game developers, and they're passionate about that. And they have an appreciation for the creative process. So it's been really, really great.
Cool. Next gen right around the corner. Still no dates on I think the Xbox has a date. I'm not sure about the PlayStation yet, but right around the corner, holiday 2020, whatever that means. New GPUs, everything. People are going to be upgrading their gaming systems. What are your guys' plans for the next generation of gaming?
Well, first of all, getting my hands on one of those consoles as soon as possible, so I can dive into those games myself at home. That's my selfish plan, because I want to just check all that stuff out and play as much of it as I can. But in terms of our approach as a studio, we are definitely excited about the opportunities that these new consoles present. There's some really interesting new things that both platforms offer. And we're just interested in, leaning into those special capabilities and seeing what we can create by using those.
As a consumer, are you more a fan of PlayStation or Xbox?
I really like X Station. It's pretty cool.
Good answer. It's the whole thing's superficial anyway, but yeah, that's awesome. I don't really have much outside of that. But I would love to like just kind of hear more about yourself, about striking distance, anything you would like to share with us and our audience.
Sure. If it's okay, I just would first of all just say hi to everybody on the team. If anybody sees this, hi, and thank you for all the work that you're putting in. When you ask about sharing things, I don't want to get too sappy, but it's been really interesting how we've been able to continue to assemble our team. We're looking at about 130 people on the team right now. And many of those individuals have come aboard since we've been in this new work from home mode. So I'm just really anxious to actually get to meet those people in person. I've seen them over Zoom, but I'm looking forward to that, being able to be in the same space with them and get to know them a lot better. It's been really amazing as we've been working on the game, just to see how productive people have been in this new kind of state of the world. People just are plugging along and making great contributions to our game, and it's really encouraging that people are able to just muscle through things. I think it's really amazing what the human spirit can do, and how people can adapt to circumstances. And it's been tremendous just getting to see that and see everybody come together and work towards trying to make the best game possible.
And I always like to ask at the end of interviews, how can our audience support you specifically, as well as Striking Distance and your coworkers and employees?
Wow, that's a very thoughtful question. I would just want everybody to be safe, stay safe, be healthy, hang in there. Hopefully we're gonna turn the corner and get through all this, and just keep playing games. I think all of the people that work at Striking Distance, we do it. We make games because we want to entertain people, and the people that play those games are those people, the gamers. So keep playing games and stay passionate and stay safe.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. This was Steve Papoutsis, the chief of, it's like a mouthful, Chief of Development Officer at Striking Distance Games. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
You got it. Thank you.
This is Spencer, Legacy Managing Editor at MonsterVine.com, and I'm here with Steve Tom Sawyer as well as Riley McShane of Proponent Games. How are you guys today?
Good, man. Hanging in there. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. So you guys you just sent out a press release about Proponent Games the other day, so I wanted to ask a couple questions, see what's cooking. The first one is, would you like to tell me about Proponent Games, what it is, why you guys founded it, pretty much everything there is to know?
Totally. So, I mean, it started off strangely enough as this this idea that was a little bit of background, I guess, before we jump into that. So my career prior to this, and still, alongside of this, is that I'm a touring musician. I play in the death metal world, and that was like my full-time gig until the coronavirus happened, and we had to cancel a headlining tour, and all of a sudden it was just like the entire live music industry just kind of shut down. So when that happened, tons of us, us being musicians, were just kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what to do, what was going to happen next. And from there, I was just kind of like, all right, well, we'll do the same things on the band side of things, where it's like live streams and, all these other kind of creative marketing things to do. But in my time, I've always wanted to make a video game. I'm a huge video game nerd. I've always been, it's just a huge part of me and my upbringing. So I made a quick little game script and kind of came up with an idea for it, and reached out to a couple people to try to see what I needed as far as getting this game made. Steve being one of those people. And what the general consensus was like, oh, if you're starting from the ground up and you want to get any interest from anyone, you need to have a vertical slice of your game, which is going to cost you anywhere from like 20 to 30 grand. And I was like, okay, so you're telling me I have to spend, this amount of money on making a chunk of the game, and then publishers still might not be interested, and then I'll just be sitting on this thing that I spent a huge amount of money on. And Steve was kind of just like, yeah, that's pretty much the way it shakes out. So I was like, well, what if instead of just trying to like make this one game happen, we did kind of like our own thing? Because after, kind of seeing how other publishers were working, and, even smaller time publishers, I was just kind of like, I feel like there's something that could be done to improve this system. And so that's kind of where the idea for Proponent started, and where we kind of, built our business model, from that ground. So Steve, what's our business model? You're good at explaining this part. You're good.
I guess, find cool games, put all our resources and know-how behind them. And, I am a firm believer that we're not trying to like hard sell anyone on anything. I think the key is that we're representing games that everybody would be down to play if they just knew about them. And so really like the whole problem that we're trying to solve is like finding the things that I guess don't fit into the portfolio of like what everyone else is sort of publishing for indie publishers. And then putting a lot of love and support behind those things, just because like discoverability on digital platforms is a nightmare, right? So that's really like the bread and butter of getting that stuff out there. That's the business model in a nutshell. Find good games, put good things behind them, and hopefully, cool people will play them and continue to play them.
So it's about the exposure then.
Yeah, I guess so. And like, again, I'm trying to give you like succinct answers, so I'm not, like giving you this huge thing to like sift through. But if you really want to get like a little bit more, I guess, exploratory with it, most indie publishers that are out there right now have like a house style, right? And so, if you look at one of my favorite people out there right now, collection of people, Raw Fury, like they put out a lot of really cool games. But I think like there would definitely be, I don't want to say that I know like what their house style is or whatever, but I think like they have cultivated an audience around like picking a certain aesthetic or picking a certain type of like easy to digest games, right? And so I think there's this thing of like, if you see a game, you would know like, oh, that's a Raw Fury game, or better example, that's a Devolver game, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right, totally. So there's this thing of like, well, what's our house style? Like, what are the things that we want to play? What are the things that we like? And, surprisingly, for two dudes who are super into death metal, like one of the first things that got us really excited was, this platforming breakout game, Anton Ball, because it's a grip of fun to play. Like as soon as you, like dive into it for more than a couple of minutes, you're like, oh, dude, I could spend a couple of hours just clearing levels on this game. So that like sort of stickiness, like that I think is going to end up being like our house style more than anything. We want to throw our weight behind games that you're going to want to like, think about when you're not playing them.
So with Anton Ball and Rise of the Betrayer, what was it that made you guys kind of gravitate towards them as your first projects? What was it about those two?
So I met Anthony or Tony at E3 last year, and he's from Summit Sphere, and they were pitching me a totally different game. And as cool as that game is, I think Anton Ball for right now fits more with like what we want to put out and more of kind of like what I would want other people to play. And it wasn't like this thing of, oh, like the jury is I'm afraid like Tony's gonna see this and be like, oh, so they don't care about my other game at all, huh? It's like it's just this thing of like the timing. It made the most sense to really like pump resources and effort behind Anton Ball. And I think it's this thing of, again, like when I was done playing it, the first thing I was thinking about was, man, I probably could have like gotten back in there and done this different and got a better score. And I was like, oh, okay, word. Like as soon as you kind of have that experience, right, it's like that's probably a good game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And so it was a similar thing with Rise of the Betrayer. I had talked to the creator, Paul, and it was for a completely different project. Because I've worked on game releases for like the last few years, and so it was kind of something along those lines. I can't get into specifics, but needless to say, that didn't end up kind of going through, and it presented an opportunity where we could come in and just finish the game in its current state, and do it that way, which I thought was like, okay, let's not pass that up, because there were multiple people interested in both of these games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of diverts me into the point of like the thing that's so our business structure is built on like three pillars that are kind of outlined in like our mission statement, and those pillars are passion, opportunity, and community. We want to have games that are made by developers who are really passionate about their ideas. We don't want to just put out cell phone shovelware just to make a quick buck and do things that way. Kind of be like a puppy mill of publishers, which works on a business level, but you lose a lot doing that as well. So we want to have that passion from our developers, which both Anthony and Paul definitely have for their projects. And then the whole opportunity thing kind of comes into play, where it's like, as we kind of mentioned earlier, games that we think are great that people just might not otherwise see because of a Kickstarter not necessarily taking off, or someone being really good at making games but not necessarily having the acumen to run a successful marketing campaign, or just as simple as having the resources to work a full-time job and also make a game in a reasonable amount of time. So providing that opportunity as well. And then the community thing is probably the biggest part of it, is that it's like we want to build communities around these games. You know what I mean? Like we want to have people that are super stoked for these games and on a first name basis with the people who make them long before the game actually comes out. So I think that when we saw those criteria already kind of being met by Rise and Anton Ball, it was just like slam dunk. You know what I mean? So being able to see those things kind of come to life as only ideas that we had for what we were looking for, and then just having them kind of slapped right down in front of us in the form of those two games was something that really brought us to want to work with those development teams.
Awesome. So finally, I gotta ask, with Proponent in the future, what are your hopes for the company? What do you hope will happen going forward with these two games and beyond?
I mean, success is the name of the game, right? We want to be able to continue to take those three things that I mentioned and provide them to other passionate game developers.
Down. I didn't know.
Yeah. Oh wait, we want to like stay afloat. Weird. Yeah. But we want to take those pillars of our business structure and be able to just bring more people into it. You know what I mean? Like by 5 years from now, I want to be able to throw a company party and have it feel like a family reunion. Like that's the vibe that I want Proponent to give off. I want it to really, live up to the name of being like, we're a proponent for these small time indie developers who have so much to offer, but not necessarily a platform to do so. So being able to provide something to the gaming community that isn't necessarily all just dollars and cents, and really has a human aspect to it that kind of sets the stage. And 10 years from now, if we see the kind of success that I'm hoping for, I'd love to have that kind of be a standard of like, oh, you don't have to rake indie developers over the coals to have them see their first release come to life. You look at Proponent. They were super cool with all their devs, and now all these games are amazingly successful, and you have all these great opportunities. And these devs have now split off and kind of done their own thing, and they all kind of come back to this home base of this publishing company that kind of got them started. So in a perfect world, that's where I want to see this company 5-10 years from now. But for now, it's just one day at a time, getting these first 2 releases out and playing it by ear every step of the way.
For sure. Yeah. Anything you want to add on, Steve, or is that
I'm trying to think of like the best way to put this into words. It's funny because like indie means so many things now, right? You can say indie studio, and that means everything from like the scrappy dude who is literally like his LLC is his apartment's address, all the way to Bungie, technically, right? Because they're independent.
Mm-hmm.
They bought out like the rights to their own IP. They're doing everything on their own. And so I think it's like this whole thing of like, okay, well, what is indie to us, and where do we fit in there, and how do we like cultivate that like success in that thoroughfare for other people who are kind of like on a similar scale of guys like Anton Ball, Rise of the Betrayer, and develop like a sense of consistency around that. I am a real big believer that there's a lot of really great experiences to be had like in this like part of the ecosystem that we're operating in. Some of my favorite games are like this scale, like Dead Cells, and Kingdom, and things like Hollow Knight, right? Shovel Knight, like Rogue Legacy, just number 2 just came out. Rogue Legacy, the first one, is one of my favorite things, and these are all sort of in like that same space. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to be mined here, and there's like a way to kind of like differentiate ourselves and be like, we're indie up to maybe like triple B, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, everything Riley said is dead on, for sure.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time to tell me all about it, guys.
Thank you for
playing both games, seeing what's in store, and yeah, this has been Spencer Legacy with MonsterVine, and check out both games. They come out next year.
Yeah, first quarter next year. So we're looking at like a late February to mid-March release window.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. And to everyone watching, thank you for watching.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Daniel Thompson with MonsterVine, and I'm here with Andrew from Servios. We're going to be talking about their latest title, or I guess upcoming title, The Walking Dead Onslaught. Anyway, Andrew, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Dan. That's doing good. It's 2020 day. Everything's on fire, but we're doing good.
Fire. So if I wanted to escape into a different apocalypse, this upcoming game, The Walking Dead Onslaught, is going to be available soon, correct? Like in a few weeks?
Yeah, we've got a digital release September 29th, and we got pre-orders going right now.
Awesome. And so let's start with that sales pitch then. Any benefits in terms of pre-ordering? Are you selling any special digital editions at all?
Yeah, so we've got some pre-order content, which is a couple of gold weapons and a skin for Daryl and Rick, which are the main protagonists of the game, and they're kind of going back and forth. So hopefully you'll be able to see Sheriff Rick or Hunter Daryl. We also have a digital deluxe edition, which includes a couple of different weapon skins. Like we have the red machete, which has its own mini series. We have that as a skin for our machete. We have Rick's mace from season 9, really bulky, crazy looking thing, and of course Lucille from the show. So
I see.
And on top of that, I believe we have an art book coming with it, which we have PAX panel with our art director Tate. Probably talking about all that stuff.
Cool. Awesome. And so essentially then from what I can assume from the trailer I watched and from how you're talking about it, Walking Dead Onslaught, I'm getting that name correct, right? It's called Walking Dead Onslaught. Okay.
All
Walking
one
Dead,
word.
all one word. Yes. Walking Dead Onslaught takes it's in the universe of the show specifically. Then so have you all been working with like AMC to bring this project to life, or how exactly did you all make the decision rather than setting the game? I mean, you had a lot of options in terms of how you could set the world, if you wanted to set it in the comics, if you wanted to set it in the Telltale games, which I guess it is now a Skybound Games project. There's a lot of different ways that a lot of different universes attributed to the IP. So what exactly drew the team to setting the game in the world of the AMC's The Walking Dead?
I mean, we've worked with HBO in the past, a couple other larger studios, and I believe that's what attracted AMC to us originally. And obviously, we had like the original conversations with them, and we found out like, hey, we have the opportunity to work with the Walking Dead brand, which is huge. I'm personally a fan of the show. I have not read the comics, unfortunately. Probably should one day.
You definitely should. They're very good.
And from that, you know, there is a division between the comics license and the show license. But we're very happy to work specifically with the AMC producers and Walking Dead writers, just because there's like specific elements of the show, like Daryl exists in the show, doesn't really exist in the comics. And like there's just so much familiarity. It's such a popular show. So many people love it so deeply. And we just wanted to do the brand justice. And in terms of like when we wanted to put it, obviously the show's running still, has had many, many seasons, but there was a really nice opportunity between season 8 and 9 of the show where there's kind of like a time skip and all the main cast is still there. So we could still have Rick, Daryl, Michonne, and Carol. But there's like, you know, really big thematic shifts happening in season 9 that we're kind of pinging on for the core story of our game. Like I said, it's kind of like Daryl and Rick, the same conflict they're having in season 9, they're having in our game. And it's like really high level, like philosophical conflict of like, you know, Daryl wants to be more like about the group and wants to keep things as they were, where they were simpler and they could take care of each other, while Rick is trying to like, we got to push society forward and like, rebuild.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So narratively, it seems like you've all put a lot of work into what's going to be presented in The Walking Dead Onslaught. It's not just going to be, it doesn't seem like you only placed efforts in replicating Norman Reedus in every aspect in wonderful VR. I think it's interesting that you talked about, because Survios has done a lot of licensed video games before and have found success particularly with licensed VR games, because I'm familiar primarily with you folks because of Creed Rise to Glory, which is a game that I own on every single VR platform from PSVR to Oculus Quest. Love that game.
Nice.
Easily one of the better licensed VR games. So I'm really excited to see what sort of respects to the IP that you have there. But deeper than that, particularly with Creed, the gameplay was very innovative and most importantly, it was very fun. So how has the team been approaching the gameplay aspects of The Walking Dead Onslaught?
So this project has evolved pretty significantly over 2 years, but even in the very beginning, the one thing that we want to do is make a fun game with this license, so that while you're playing it, it doesn't just feel like, you know, why they even make this a game. You know, we're all gamers. Like the reason we got into Survios is not only the challenge of VR, which is incredibly frustrating and exciting at times, but also just because we want to make good games. So we've developed like this entire brutal combat freedom, you know, marketing sling term, but basically what it means is like, we allow the player to hack, slash, bash, bludgeon, and just shove and manipulate walkers basically to their heart's content. Like we don't even have like a stamina system or durability. And what what that gives us is the opportunity to throw the player in the middle of a horde of like 30 walkers and try to get themselves out. And from that, we like give the player a bunch of different tools: hammers, bats, machetes, knives, battle axes, and then of course like a range of firearms, shotguns, lever action rifles, assault rifles, SMGs. So we just wanted to take those intense moments that happen in the first like 6 seasons and more, but when they go out on the supply run and like there's just walkers all over the place and you're trying to get yourself out and like something goes wrong and one person is lost, like that feeling of intensity, we wanted to capture that in the gameplay. And we actually have that kind of broken up into 2 different feels, if you will, just because like half the game is kind of reliving Daryl's story, like he's storytelling to Rick, and you're going through an entire campaign that way, and it's a lot more like thematic and scripted. And then we have another side of the game, which is kind of like these scavenging efforts where Rick and the others go off into the world and they try to find supplies and bring it back to Alexandria.
You mentioned a lot of melee weapons, and have you all found it like challenging at all to like implement the melee weapons in particular?
I would say it's so we were very lucky to have all of our knowledge before from Raw Data and Creed when it came to these kind of concepts, but you know, it's very different when you start bringing in sharp weapons and like axes and the way that those things simulate. And like you know, I was the project lead designer on Sprint Vector as well, which is like a big locomotion style game.
Didn't know you folks did that one. That's a really good one.
Yeah. It was the thing that I learned from Sprint Factor that definitely applies to Walking Dead is like assisting the player. The player has a certain expectation, right? Like you want to come down with an axe and you want to hit the walker right square in the head, right? But that doesn't always happen. And so like there's often times where you just need a little bit of a push. And it needs to be done in a very subtle way so that the player still feels like they're doing it. But these are like the concepts we applied to Sprint Vector to make sure locomotion felt good. So it was like intended, your motions were intended. Same thing, we're kind of applying these intended concepts to combat in Walking Dead so that when you thrust the knife, it actually does go where you want it to. And also, you know, to some extent, you're still guiding it.
In terms of the Walking Dead Onslaught's campaign, then, is there an estimation in terms of how long you folks are going to have this project be? Or
so the most recent numbers that I got from our QA department was that the game is around 10 to 15 hours long.
Wow. Okay.
So this is not like a 2 or 3 hour experience or anything like that.
Interesting.
It's a full game. But yeah, we've got, I think like the important thing to hammer in for that experience is, you know, it isn't just the campaign. I mentioned like there's a scavenger mode and a campaign mode. Really, these things are intertwined, and it's kind of like you're going back and forth between each effort, and they both represent different characters and different kind of a storyline, and you're building up towards like reconstructing Alexandria. So it's almost like there's like multiple layers of progression on top of each other, whether you're progressing like Daryl's story in the past or literally like these scavenging efforts into Alexandria, literally progressing Alexandria or progressing your arsenal.
Interesting. Okay, and so let's actually talk more about the survival aspects of the gameplay then. So you like you make these like scavenging trips almost to like collect like food materials, like can you like explain a little bit more like the survival elements that's going to be introduced in this game?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we have kind of a traditional crafting material pipeline here, but on top of crafting materials, we kind of have community materials. Just because, you know, it's the apocalypse, you expect to be scavenging food. And a major core theme of Walking Dead is kind of like the community, and like rebuilding Alexandria is definitely a core theme of the game. So we wanted the player to go out in the world, and when they're finding food, or maybe rarely they find like fuel or something, when they bring it back to the community, that's like consumed by the community, and you're like fueling up a scouting party bar that when that's filled actually goes out in the world and you get like a new survivor. And at that point, that survivor can send you letters, and they can ask for like a requisition, which is just like, hey, when you're out in the world, look for this thing and maybe I'll give you something. So there's almost like little storylines going on with your community members sending letters to you. But additionally, obviously, there is full crafting material efforts.
In that case, then the game is coming out $30 for the standard edition on September 29th, correct? Is when people will be able to expect to play this?
That is our digital release date, yes.
Awesome. Perfect. And that's coming out on what platforms exactly?
will be coming out on PSVR and on PC VR platforms, so Oculus and Steam, with support for the index controllers as well. And new Rift desk. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for hopping on, Andrew. I'm really excited for the game. I'm really excited to see what you folks do, since you've proven yourself before with other licenses, and yeah, very excited to get some more melee combat in my.
I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'm nothing but elated. Thanks for stopping by, Andrew.
No problem. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brian Seymour, writer and contributor for MonsterVine. I'm here today to do an interview with Dale North, a composer who's worked on hit indie titles such as Wizards of Legend and River City Girls. His latest work is on Afterburner Studios' roguelike game Dreamscaper, which is currently available in early access. Dale, why don't we get started by having you tell us how your relationship with Afterburner Studio began?
It was about a year and a half ago, maybe closer to 2 years. I was in San Francisco at the time, and the team is based in San Francisco as well. And they called me because they enjoyed what I did for Wizard of Legend. They told me what they had going, and there was certainly an early playable, but I was in from minute one. It sounded like exactly what I've been wanting to kind of pour myself into.
How would you kind of describe your music and your sound?
I get asked that sometimes, and it's always a hard one for me because I'm consciously always trying to work outside of genre, you know, not in the I'm a cool groundbreaking composer kind of way, but like it's more that I grew up trying to imagine what these games were trying to sound like in the earliest forms, right? Usually it's very targeted. It's like we wanted to sound like this or relate to this or here's some references. And as respectfully as I can, I continue to push back. And now I'm getting more comfortable pushing back farther and farther and farther and saying, hey, why don't we do something that's completely in service of the game and the story we're trying to tell and the world we're trying to build here. And maybe not so much follow the lines that someone else has already drawn. Let's do something weird. Let's do something different.
What exactly was your impetus for getting into video game soundtracks?
Literally from putting a video game in a console, I've wanted to do this. If you look at your Nintendo when it's not on, Nintendo Entertainment System, you have to wonder what those little ports for are on the side. And a lot of people went through the process of trying the AV port versus the RF adapter and saying, hey, this looks a lot better. But there's also an audio port, and all you need is an RCA splitter, and then you can plug that into a stereo system and record a sound test mode. That was a very, very big thing for me, to get a game and record the soundtrack.
Where about in to Dreamscaper where it was Afterburner Studios when you were approached?
It was still very early, and I was living in San Francisco at the time, and that's where the team is based. And they called me over, and I don't know, it was the first time we met, the first day we met, and sitting in their studio, I just started spewing forth these musical ideas, and I remember their faces just looking, this guy is crazy. I think they liked how crazy I was, and you know, I kind of went home with a gig that day.
So Dreamscaper is like a very dreamy game, for lack of a better adjective.
There's no better.
If you've played the game, like, you know what that means. But yeah, everything about it, from like its kind of like atmosphere to the way like the characters move. Obviously the soundtrack kind of gives us this very surreal kind of feel to it, even in the waking world. Has the game kind of always had that constant dreamlike feel and aura to it? And how has, kind of as they developed the game and evolved the game to kind of, like, as you said, blossom into something bigger than how it started, how has the music and the soundtrack evolved with it?
This is not my first roguelike, and I love writing music for roguelikes, and I'm working on some new ones as of now. It's a very comfortable place for me, and roguelikes are the coolest. But the one general feeling for them is that they're fast. They move fast, and the music isn't always fast, but it usually is pretty high tempo. My initial pitch to them, again, on day one was, what if we did roguelike music, but it's actually slow? Actually, let's do 100% of the soundtrack in 6/8 time, which, you know, even if you're not musically inclined, you can kind of get a sense of what that means. It's like, instead of 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Another musical concept that I pitched initially was like, let's never have the music resolve. For the most part, I would say 90% of the music doesn't musically resolve. It gives a sense of like being over, but it's never done. And you just have this, with all the techniques put together, you have the sense the music is moving. And certainly when there's combat in a battle state, there's musical tricks involved to never change the tempo, but feel like there's a lot more action and movement. But yeah, it was always dreamy.
When Cassidy, the protagonist for Dreamscaper, when she's kind of feeling a bit more jumbled in life, the music itself gets a bit more jumbled. When she is in the waking world and becoming familiar with her new home and everything, the music is a bit sweeter. I don't think somber is the right word, but like kind of like not as intense. And you know, the music does a very, very good job of matching Cassidy's, what I assume to be her attitude in given moments, in telling her story. But are there any other ways besides like jumbled music and pacing, how the music tells Cassidy's story?
You know, it's depending on how far you've entered in the game, you definitely feel a sense of the more literal form of music reflecting a mood. But even then, I didn't have as much elbow room as you normally do, because I had to stay in the confines of my music design. Right? So one of the things that changes, pretty pronounced changes, is her apartment. And as the game opens, you see there's a child in a room, and that's kind of I'm not sure exactly, but I think that's kind of like a foreshadowing of how the game system's going to work. And when you play it, you'll see that it starts out in a room where she's just moved to the city, and the music is definitely sad, you know, but it's not sad in that obvious minor video game soundtrack kind of way. It's more, I wanted to sound like maybe you just woke up, or maybe you're about to fall asleep and you're in that kind of hazy mind state. What does that sound like musically when your mood is reflected just a teeny bit in that? And so that's really my approach for a lot of the kind of bigger, more marked musical changes, where when you play the game and you start out that way and you kind of come back and fall asleep and wake up, when you wake up the next time, you're in an apartment and she's established inner city. And Cassidy will, you know, can then go about town. And you definitely feel more of a, I don't want to say vibrance, but there's definitely a little bit more of a warmth. I'm glad you said somber, because I really was going for that, even in the most upbeat times, you know. And sweet, I'm glad you used the word as well, because that's exactly what I was going for. So it's this mix of somber and sweet. The goal is to continue to push those combinations in ways that don't necessarily fit together throughout the kind of reveals of her backstory.
Dreamscaper is still in early access, of course, so it's still an evolving game. When you saw the game as it is in its current form, the current builds, what kind of was going through your head when you could finally hear your music in Dreamscaper that way? I know this isn't the first time you've done video game music, but did Dreamscaper feel any different compared to, like, say, Wizards of Legend or any other indie game you've worked on?
The feel is a lot different for me, and that's a lot of that has to do with the amount of power and decision making that they left to me. Most good developers give you as much wiggle room as they can possibly give you, and that's always appreciated. But for them, it was more like I came up with, you know, basically the music's entire concept. And so, you know, it's one of those things where when you pitch something and you manage to sell it, you really got to make it work. And for me to play the game, I, you know, as you know, more final builds were coming down the line, I still wasn't completely sure that it worked in the way that I intended musically. And there was definitely nips and tucks in both the music and in the systems. But a lot of it isn't up to me. It's up to, again, players and how they feel and how they receive it. You know, if I'm going back to what the very first thing I said in our conversation, is that like one of the greatest things about video music, I believe, is that like your interpretation is the correct answer. Like it's not about me and it's not about my intent so much. I just like any other artist, it's up to me to try to say what I am trying to say in the best way that I can and hope that you receive it. So in playing the game in its current form, as you mentioned, I was excited. It felt really good. And it's a different feeling than I've ever had from playing a game I've worked on before, because it was like, this was kind of a stretch and it was really weird to put these systems together. And this definitely is, I mean, for me, it's definitely uncharted territory, but I don't know that this approach has been done in this way on anything that I can think of. I was very happy to see that it felt like it worked. But again, as I'd said just a bit ago, I really didn't know until others started to play it, and that connection seemed to happen. And at the end of the day, that's really my job, is to kind of make that connection.
For listeners and others who come across your work, what is the best way for them to support you?
I mean, playing Dreamscaper is a fantastic way to support, not only myself but the team. We put a lot into it. We have big hopes for it, and man, I don't know that I've written and kind of crafted a soundscape this much for anything that I've worked on. So that's cool. But beyond that, supporting me, I'm not super focused on album sales. But if you want to stream any of my stuff, literally all of it's on Apple Music and Spotify and Google Play and everything.
Hey everyone, so I'm Diego Escala, reviews manager of MonsterVine, and I'm here with interviewing Jacob Bergs of Ysbyrd Games. Burgess. My mistake. I'm terrible with names.
No, that's okay. So it's Jacob Burgess with Ysbyrd Games.
All right. Ysbyrd.
Ysbyrd.
My bad.
Brid.
Jacob Burgess with Ysbyrd Games. I've got Julio Mendez and Pedro de la Cruz with Glitch Factory.
Pedro de la Cruz Machado.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Pedro. It's actually Pedro da Cruz.
It's da Cruz. Yeah,
oh my god. I don't have my glasses on.
That's totally fine.
No problem. It's a different name.
I mean, you might want to consider changing it. De La sounds sexy, but it's also Spanish and not Portuguese. So
I like it more.
Pedro de la Cruz. Yeah, sure.
It can be
I'm like glancing down at the little small text, and I'm I'm from Venezuela, so I'm so used with all the names are De La. So I saw the D, and I'm like, all right, I don't need to read the rest.
I got apologize. It. I fucking got it.
This interview's off to a great start.
I think so.
But we're here to talk about No Place for Bravery. It's your guys' latest game. And before we get into that, if you guys wanted to just do a quick introduction, what's your role with each of your separate companies?
Sure. Okay. So I'm Pedro Machado, Pedro da Cruz Machado. I'm a game designer and level designer for the project, and I'm also a producer. I do some project management, and I make sure that the guys are staying on time.
I'm Tulio Mendes. I'm the creative director and one of the artists, and I'm also making Pedro's life a little bit harder. It's kind of my job.
And I'm Jacob Burgess. I'm with Ysbyrd Games, the publishing partner for Glitch Factory and No Place for Bravery. And I do my best to offer advice and do as much support as possible. So it's their game. I'm just kind of hanging out for the most part. So I'm gonna let them talk and be the wonderful, charming people I know they are.
And so with No Place for Bravery, what's a quick just overview of what the game is?
No Place for Bravery is a 2D pixel art top-down action RPG. And it tells the story of Thorn. He's a war veteran, and he goes on this quest searching for his daughter. And yeah, it's a very personal experience for us because we have invested a lot of time and effort, and yeah. I'm sorry.
And the main theme of the game is also based on real life experiences. So, like 5 years of our life, and
yeah, and a little bit more of our experiences. Yeah. So, and it's a challenging game. But although we're also very focused on accessibility.
So I played through the demo last night. I had a lot of fun with it.
Thank you.
I kind of just went into it just raw. I didn't even look at a trailer or anything. I'm just like, this name sounds cool. Send me a demo. Let me check this out. And
that's awesome.
the Viking, it's got a bit of a Viking sort of vibe to it. How did you guys come to that sort of aesthetic, the kind of Norwegian-ish?
We began with like trying to create a game that has some common ground, So if you are familiar with this kind of game, there is something like medieval European and things like that. But we also try to put a little bit more of us, like our reference. So there is this medieval European, it's kind of general here in Brazil, but we also put a lot of Japanese and Chinese culture to the mix. There is like the environment is kind of a mix between both. And
yeah, we pull a lot from different cultures. So, and there's also a little bit of native Brazilian and Native American, I guess. So yeah, I know you picked it up this Nordic influence, but there's a lot more during the game.
Okay, that's cool.
The Nordic is the strongest one because of the music, It's really heavy on the game, and we wanted the music to have that weight, It's a good way to create the right ambience and give the game the weight we want. So it's kind of in the upfront of the game right now, like the music.
Yeah, and the game, Brazil itself is actually not a lot of people may know that, but is very, very diverse. Even when I went down to Sao Paulo, where you and I met, Tulio, there's a ton. It's got the second largest Japanese population in the world, for example. Not all people know that. It's there's a lot. It's awesome.
Yeah. We have a huge Italian and German I lost the word here, but yeah, you got it. It's a very diverse country.
I think for our generation and the one that came before, maybe we grow with this thing, we consume a lot of anime and manga, I think we have a lot of that in our kind of DNA, kind of giving us motivation and inspiration. There is a lot of anime and manga here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And with the combat with it, I felt it was very difficult. It was very focused on parrying and making sure you watch the guy's movements, memorize how long each combo swing is. I don't want to call it. I know a lot of people are probably going to look at it and say Dark Souls just because of the difficulty. But
no, we've never heard that. That's
because that's the only hard game apparently. But when you went for that sort of style of combat, how did you go about balancing the difficulty with keeping it? Because you mentioned accessibility earlier.
Yeah,
how did you manage? How did you go about doing that and making it so it's difficult, but also anyone can come in and play it?
This version of the demo that you played, it has only kind of the difficult that will be the standard difficult for the game, but of course we're gonna iterated based on feedbacks and things that we are getting from the demo. But we want to create a, I don't know, kind of a story mode or a mode that is more accessible to a broader audience, because we started doing this, thinking only in the hardcore player, it has to be difficult and skilled based and things like that. But from a little while to now, like time has passed, and we realize that the game is not only about the gameplay itself, but it says something that needs to be said to a broader audience. So we are kind of making it possible right now.
Okay, that's a really good way of coming at it. I never thought of the game development can change as you play and going through it and going, you know what, actually the story is more important than the combat itself.
Yeah, I think they both work together, but having an easier game, it does not hurt the vision of the project, It was more like us wanting to make a harder game, not the game needed to be that way,
So going back earlier to what you guys said about real life experiences being part of the game, could you iterate a bit more on that? Are you taking actual things that happened in your lives that are in the actual game itself as part of the story?
So everything orbitates around a single event, in the end, it's a narrative event, but everything in the game is built around it to give it strength, to make it resonate to the player and things like that. And so, that's it. More is a spoiler,
it's hard to talk about it without spoiling the game, but the game is definitely based on some of our teammates' lives. We did a lot of soul searching. We had countless meetings just talking about not only the mechanics and how we were going to play the game, but what we wanted to say, what we wanted to reflect on the game. And that's why it's very personal for us, because we put in a lot, not only time, but our personal experiences.
One thing that I like to put when we are talking about narrative is that when in Glitch we talk about narrative, we are not talking only about the script, It's narrative is everything that helps that story to happen. So gameplay and mechanics and everything is kind of building momentum to this big moment, and this moment is no place for bravery, right?
Mm-hmm. When I played the demo, there's not a ton of hard plot in it. It felt like a very good movie trailer where you got a very good vibe of what the full experience is going to be. Was that intentional when you were going to release that demo?
I would say yes, is that what we wanted to do with the demo is kind of present the best kind of feel, like a movie trailer. Once you'll get a feeling for this game, you'll get an idea of the narrative, you'll get an idea of the combat. But what's really cool is that we also have a survey that's out. So if you play the game, you can give us direct feedback. One of the things that as the publisher, I love working on with Glitch, and what Glitch Factory does is iterates and takes the feedback and is constantly improving and constantly tweaking to make it what they want to be. It's kind of game development by way of sculpting.
So one final thing, just to talk about the game mechanics itself. So it's very, I don't want to say hack and slashy, but it's a very deliberate hack and slash sort of game. But it's got there's weapon switching. You have an inventory with other items you can equip. Is there any? You have special abilities. Are there any other elements to that combat? Oh man, I just realized this might be a spoilery question. That are in does the game expand even further than what's presented in the demo?
Yes.
Okay. that's a good no detail answer. Cool.
Awesome.
So just to wrap things up, so I don't take up too much more of your time, is there a estimated release date and platform list for the game?
We're aiming for about 2021. We're definitely going to be doing Steam. We're definitely going to be doing Switch, PC, anything else, we're not quite ready to make announcements yet because we just have to take a look at a lot of boring biz dev stuff before we are ready to announce.
I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to come speak with me.
And thank you very much for watching this.
Thank you for playing too.
And again, thank you so much.